So before we move any further in this video, I'm just going to point out a couple of mistakes that I made in the previous videos. So the first one would be in handlers. This is actually IDE specific, I think. So this is an error that you're going to get only in PyCharm. So previously we just said from state machine import state machine, and even though both state machine and handlers.py are in the same folder, which is scpi, you still need to specify the folder when you're importing from the file. And when you're actually creating the executables or you're using a different IDE, this might be different actually. So you might not have to do this, and it's usually easier to put all the files in the same folder when you're finally building the final executable file. But I'm just trying to create everything neat, so that's why I'm creating different folders. But for the final project, for the final file that you're creating, you need to make sure that you put everything in the same folder. And that's just like a Python thing. You don't have to do that like other languages necessarily. Anyway, too much ranting. So the second mistake that I made was in here. So when I added the state to sampling, I said run and stop. But if I look in the handlers, the state that I assigned to the sampling was running and stopped instead of run and stop. So I'm just going to change that to running and stopped. Yeah, okay. And lastly, in the server file, this is not actually a mistake, it's just a redundant exercise. So we're actually passing in the client socket into this receive message function. But if you look, the client socket is we've actually made it a global variable. So it's actually going to have the value of the current client that we're connected to. So we don't have to pass the client socket as a parameter, because we do have access to this variable even though it's not passed into it. So I'm just going to get rid of this here, and over here I'm just going to change it to client socket. Oops. And just going to make sure that I change it everywhere. So client socket, and down here, when I'm actually calling this message, this function, I am going to take out this parameter. Okay, so that seems to be about it. I might encounter more errors in the future, so I'll be sure to be pointing those out. But for now, I think that's it. So we can move on further in the video. So in the previous video, we actually created this receive message function to receive the incoming client messages properly, so with more control over it, so using the header size. But we didn't actually implement a way to actually send the messages with the header size attached to it. So we're only on the client side, we're only receiving it in the proper way, but we aren't actually sending the message with the header size attached to it. So let's do that now. So after we've entered the message, over here I'm going to say encoded message is equal to client message dot encode UTF-8, and when we're sending it, what we're going to do is get rid of this, and here I'm going to say len encode a message. Then we're going to have this with the header size, and then I am going to append the client message string to this. Is that another one? No. Okay, so also I need to like encode the whole thing. So I'm going to put a bracket here, and we're going to encode this whole string. So bracket there, UTF-8, and yeah, let's look on the server side. So, oh yeah, I forgot to actually set the username and the protocol to none when we actually disconnect from a client. Otherwise, next time you connect to a client, even though we're connecting to a new client, the username and protocol, because they're global variables, they're no longer be none. So it's already going to have a username and global variable. So the first thing you enter the next time you connect, so on the client side, it's going to ask you for the username and the protocol, but because the next time you connect it's no longer none, so it's actually going to be taken as the messages instead of the first two, username and the protocol. So what I'm going to do is actually set the username and the protocol to none as soon as we disconnect from a client. Protocol is going to be none as well. Okay, so I think it's about time to test it out. So let's test it out. So I've got two terminals open here. So bearing in mind that I haven't actually implemented the commands function yet. So all we're testing out first is that the receive function works properly. So we haven't made any sort of mistakes anywhere. And then once we've confirmed that this basic functionality works, then we can move on to implementing the commands function, which is then going to implement our pass long and pass short functions, which is what we have put down here. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to venv main pi server, and on the next one I'm going to say venv main pi client. Say Monty L. Hi, server says nice. Hello, server says nice. So our basic functionality is still working. On the server side, on the client side, we implemented this extra thing. Well, it's not extra, but it's something we hadn't done before, so we have done that now, and we're now sure that that works. So we can move on to implementing the command parsing functionality that we have implemented and test that out. So let's take a look at the commands function once again. So it's going to take in a CMD value, which is going to be the parameter passed into the, which is going to be the command passed into the client, and what we're going to be doing is so when we pass in the pass long function and the pass short function, we're actually expecting some return value, which is then going to be stored into this response variable. But if we actually look at the pass long function, we aren't actually returning anything in anywhere. So we do need to make sure that we do return something, so the response actually gets something back. And for query, it's going to be different. So for query, we're actually going to return different things. So if we make a query for the channel, we're going to return the current state of the channel. But because we're not actually implementing the query functionality yet, what we're actually doing right now is just passing a command and making a change to our to the server, which is basically our oscilloscope. So all we need to do is, once we have actually successfully made a change to our server, all we need to send back as a response is a success message. So if we did manage to do this, so if we did manage to change the channel without any sort of error, all we need to send back is a success message. So I'm just going to say success, and I'm going to just copy and paste this everywhere else. So Control C, paste here, and paste here, and else if we had an error, I'm just going to return the same thing back. So Control C, return. I'm going to paste this. Okay, we're going to do the same to the short, but before we test it out, I'm just going to leave that as is, and later on we can just copy and paste stuff. So for now, we just need to make sure that we don't enter the protocol as as S, because we haven't properly taken care of the pass short function. Okay, so now that we're actually getting a response back, we know that we're getting something back, we can now implement our commands function. So I'm going to come down here when we receive a message, and we have checked that the message is, we do have a message, so we haven't just received nothing. Then what I'm going to do after the print, what I'm going to do is use the commands function, and because the commands function is also returning a response, for now I'm just going to store it in response, and I'm going to run the command. And for CMD, what we're going to put in there is same as what we're doing here, so message with the data key. So remember, the message is now actually a dictionary, so what we get returned here is actually going to be a dictionary, which is up here. So the dictionary is going to have the header, which is going to be the message header, and the data, which is going to be the message data. So what we're interested in for the command function is the data part. So I'm just going to extract that, and yeah, that's about it, I suppose. And finally, I think I'm just going to print the response, which I don't think I need to, because if you look at the parser, before I return the success, I'm actually printing this out, so it's telling me that we're actually doing something, and if we do get an error, we're just printing the same thing out. So I don't really need to print anything out just to confirm that it's working, but I'm just going to do it anyway, just to double check. So yeah, I'm just going to say response. Yeah, so if you're really lucky, everything should be working at this point. I mean, not everything, but something should be working at this point. But if when it comes to programming, people, we're just not lucky. I mean, luck doesn't come into the equation usually. Anyway, let's test it out anyway. Pi server. L, and let's try something out. I'm going to say waveform source channel 2. Okay, let's see. Okay, name command is not defined. Yeah, command, it's commands, not command. Okay, I'm just gonna have to test it out again. I'm just gonna skip that part. So I reconnected, and I'm just going to test that part out. Sorry. So I'm gonna say waveform source channel 2. Let's see if something happened. And we cannot use a string pattern on a byte-like object, and that happened on line 34 in pi server.py, and line 66, so line 34. So it's actually in line 28 CMD parser. So let's take a look at that. CMD parser, line 28. Line 28. So basically our CMD, what it's saying is our CMD is still in bytes format, and it's not. Okay, so we forgot to. We are supposed to, just like in this string here, when we extract the data part from the message, we actually decode it into UTF-8, which we forgot to do here. So we're going to do that now. And just like before, I'm going to skip the part where I reopen the terminals and stuff. Okay, so I'm going to test it again. Source L. Oh, sorry, that's not supposed to be. Anyway, we got some sort of error. So let's see. Type equals com.split. Bulletin function object is not subscriptable. That. It's not. Okay. That's in line 32 CMD parser. Line 32 CMD parser. Okay. Oh yeah, it's right here. So instead of using square brackets, we're supposed to use round brackets, because split is actually a function. Okay, so I'm gonna have to save that, and again I'm gonna skip the terminal stuff. Right, so I'm gonna run the command again, waveform source channel 2, and the server said nice, which okay, yeah. Okay, so we did something. So chan 2 is the current channel selected, and we got success, so it seems to be working. Let's try something else out. So I'm gonna say waveform mode, and I'm going to say, well, it's normal by default, so I'm going to say maximum. So it said nice, And success. So max is the mode selected. Okay, nice. Let's try out something like waveform mode raw. So it said nice. Raw mode is selected, which it should not be because if we look into handlers, raw mode should not get selected when sampling is on. Sampling if sampling dot get state equals running new state dot mode equals get state, and sampling needs to be turned off. Which we're not doing. For mode. I'll figure this out, but I'm pretty sure it's raw is not selected. Okay. Actually, hold on. I think the problem is from sampling. So sampling.getState, only if sampling.getState is in running, only then we will say that sampling needs to be turned off. But remember, we made some mistakes, and I think I forgot to fix them properly. So if you go back and see empty parser, we fixed it up here. So we did sampling.addState is running, but we forgot to fix it here where we set the sampling start state. So it needs to be running, not run. I'm going to save that. But before I test it, I'll just test format. But format should be fine. But I'll test it anyway. Format. Let's try ASCII. And just to try a weird form of casing, I'm just going to make it like that. And server said nice. ASCII format is selected. Okay, so I'm just going to close the server again and reopen it just to test this change that we just made, which is sampling is now in the running state, not run, which was invalid state. Okay, let's just quit this. So I'm going to say pi server, and in here we're going to run the client, so cd client. Not in directory. We're not in the same directory. ls. Oh, did I do cd client? I'm supposed to do pi client. Client. So yeah, let's try out waveform mode raw. So said nice. And okay, we have selected the raw mode again. Okay. Okay, so I've done some scrolling through the handler .py file, and I've realized that we actually forgot to add the error state functionality for the mode transition function. What if you get into mode and it's neither normal nor maximum or raw? We aren't dealing with the fact that it could be something else. So the command that has so we have the waveform and the mode bit correct, but this bit might be something else, so we aren't actually handling that in the mode transition function. So I'm going to fix that now. So it wasn't actually raw specific, so I'm sorry about that tangent. So before we actually return the new state, I'm going to add that else here. So we've got the if, elif, but we don't have an else here. So I'm going to add that else, and I'm going to say new state equals error state. Is that what we called it? Let me just confirm. Error state, yeah, with a camel case, yeah. Okay, so let's see if we have that here. No, we don't. So I'm going to add that here as well. Return. No, sorry. New state is error state. But I still can't figure out why when we actually when the sampling is running, we are able to set the mode to raw. So this is something I'm going to figure out by the next video. So keep watching. See you next time.